And then I'm going to close this dialog box so that everyone can see everything. Um, Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Maylin Aquino, community organizer with the Asian Law Alliance. I'm joined today by Aaron James, Raymond Goins, and Sean Allen, and then also Magna Lin from ALA as well. Tonight we are going to be presenting on the topic of tasers. There is a proposal that is set to be in motion with the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, and we're here to provide, some community education, provide you an opportunity to ask any questions that you have to some of our experts that are with us today, and really just learn more about what is happening in our local communities and understand how we as community members can incite change according to our beliefs and our opinions. So tonight's presentations is put together and presented by members from the Coalition for Justice and Accountability, which has been working for over 20 years towards police accountability within Santa Clara County. And so it's really exciting night. We'll be together for about an hour and we'll get right in. So kind of like I had mentioned previously, the issue at hand is that Sheriff Johnson is planning to propose to the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors that all SCC sheriff office in custody and enforcement officers working within county jails be armed with tasers. Our group finds that tasers are a dangerous and deadly weapon that is often misrepresented by pro-taser groups. And tonight's conversation is really going to be going in depth about the issues and dangers of implementing tasers within our communities. So just to set the stage and give a little bit of background context to what's been happening in the progress of this proposal and CJ's campaign. So looking at the weapon class mainly of tasers, tasers are considered a type of military equipment as defined by California Assembly Bill 481. This requires that the Board of Supervisors approve that the sheriff's office can acquire them, as in like even have the right to buy them or to utilize them. And then in August of this last year, August 2023, there was a hearing with the Community Correction and Law Enforcement Monitoring Committee, also known as CCLEM. And in this hearing, there was a presentation both from the Sheriff's Office as well as from the Coalition for Justice and Accountability. And even by hearing presentations from both sides and both sides being able to present argument, CCLEM actually recommended that the board did not allow tasers within Santa Clara County. And that is with both like professional and community opinion on both sides of the aisle. And looking at where tasers are in the county right now, just to, kind of draw the line in the sand, currently most, if not all, city police departments within Santa Clara County are armed with tasers. This proposal on the table is to allow the county sheriff's office to have tasers specifically. So we can kind of think of policing in the county as a type of pyramid. So at the bottom base of the pyramid, we have our city police departments, individual municipalities. And then a step above those individual cities and their police departments, we have the sheriff's office, and they serve and protect the whole county and kind of supervise other cities that may not be large enough to have their own police department. So that is kind of where we're at in progress with this campaign now, and some background on where things have started. And so I also want to provide a content warning for tonight's presentation, particularly in these next two slides. they do contain video footage and text descriptions of people being tased and having detrimental responses to the electroshock that is delivered. I do want to note specifically that these videos on the next few slides do contain profanity, nudity, death, abuse, police brutality, and then mentions of pregnancy loss or miscarriage. And so if you find that these videos are too intense for you to watch or overwhelming, you are more than welcome to take a few seconds to step away from the screen, lower the volume, or mute the volume. The videos do total about 2 minutes, so with some time for discussion in between, so maybe totaling around 5 minutes. If you feel overwhelmed, you are more than welcome to take a pause from this discussion until that portion is over. So what we're going to do is just get started with the first video. And so in this video, I'll read the text description. A wrongful death lawsuit is filed against the city of Los Angeles, stemming from the January death of Keenan Anderson. Lauren Coronado reports for the NBC4 news team, and this was reported on Monday, June 19th, 2023.
Sorry for interrupting, Malin. I can't hear the audio. I don't know if I'm the only one.
I'm sorry, did you say you can't hear it?
Yeah, I can't hear the audio.
Oh, are other folks able to hear it, or?
No.
Okay. Sure, let me fix that. Okay, here we go.
This video from January. Police body camera footage shows 31-year-old Keenan Anderson flagging down an LAPD officer for help after a car crash in Venice. Anderson. Attorneys representing Anderson's family say police tased Anderson multiple times and accused the officers involved of excessive use of force. Anderson later died at the hospital. The LA County Coroner's Office says Anderson's death was the result of heart failure and cocaine use.
And seeing that videotape says everything I need to know to tell me that his death was wrongful. I care not what the coroner's office says in terms of his having cocaine in his system at the time of his death.
Anderson was a teacher at a school in Washington, D.C. and a father to a 5-year-old boy. He was in L.A. to visit relatives over the holidays when the incident happened. And I reached out to the LAPD for comment. A representative responded with, the department does not comment on pending litigation. Reporting in Ladera Heights, I'm Lauren Coronado, NBC4 News.
And in our next video, this video does contain, again, mentions of profanity, nudity, and then a loss of pregnancy. Oh, I'm sorry. And then I will also read the text description at the bottom for accessibility. Martini Smith, 20 years old, suffered a miscarriage in jail after being tased by sadistic guards Dave Burke and I'm sorry, I'm not able to read this for whichever reason.
Last time I'm going to tell you.
Martini Smith, 20 years old, suffered a miscarriage in jail after being tasered by sadistic guards. Dave Burke, political correspondent, reported by Dave Burke, political correspondent, on the 6th of December, 2017.
I will tase you. Do exactly what she tells you to do.
Take your tongue ring out and hand it to me.
I'm here.
It sticks with me like it was yesterday. I remember everything. I can remember the faces of the guards. I remember, what they look like.
I want to go to sleep, man. I just want to go to sleep.
That's what she said.
Just let me go to sleep.
I felt really embarrassed. And I felt like crap.
Listen, it's the last time.
I don't care, man. Taste my
Taser,
stomach. All right. Oh.
Lay down on the ground. Lay down on the ground. Now do exactly what she tells you to do. Do not resist her in any way, or I will get you again.
Like, it hurt really bad. It burned. Like, I was on fire. Like, my chest was on fire. It hurt really bad.
Take your tongue ring out.
I can't.
I need something to take it out with. Slippery, I can't. Please give me some tissue. That's all you had to do.
I feel like you should use a taser if someone is charging at you or threatening your life, or to get them to go down. I don't think you should use a taser for somebody that's not doing anything, unlawful. Like, I'm not breaking the law. I just couldn't get my tongue ring out.
Oh my God! Why you tase me? Why you tase me? Take your pants off. I'm about to have a seizure, guys.
So what we see in these videos are people who are, trying to do the right thing, trying to comply to whichever orders are given to them, or approaching the police for help, even in the first video we watched with Keenan Anderson. And what we see is the response from the police being so negative or so overdrawn in a time where these people are coming to them trying to be peaceful, trying to complete the tasks that they're being asked by the officers. In the video that we just watched, the woman is being instructed to take out her tongue ring, and she's explaining to the officers that she's having a really difficult time because it's wet and she needs a napkin to make it a little bit dry so that she has tension to unscrew it. And they aren't willing to meet her halfway or listen to what she needs to do in order to complete their demand. And then when she is tased, that's only the wet or like the slobberiness that's causing her inability to take out the tongue ring is only further exacerbated by the physical response somebody has to receiving that much electricity in their system. And what we're really trying to drive home here is that tasers are not the de-escalation tool that we as community members are led to believe. Being that tasers do kill, and if something is meant to be a de-escalation tool, a non-violent or less violent tactic, they are still killing people. And according to Reuters, tasers kill on average 1 person per week in the United States. And again, a less lethal option is still a lethal option. People are still dying by the use of tasers within the country. And there's also unethical usage of tasers. 9 out of 10 people who are tased are unarmed, and majority of these people are Black, Latinx, and people of color, kind of further playing into known systems like carceral systems and racial systems that are already so heavily ingrained within our society. And tasers are sometimes referred to as weapons rather than tools, but this is not something that should deter us from seeing them for what they really are. De-escalation is meant to be a non-violent tactic, but tasers actually hinder de-escalation attempts. The taser manufacturer Axon refers to the tasers as a weapon 145 times in the product warning label. And so we as the community are led to believe that this is a tool, something to help the officers, when in reality, it is just as much a weapon as anything else on their belt. And tasers have a high death rate. In 2018, there was a total of 1,081 taser-related deaths at the hands of law enforcement. And using the math from the Reuters article with the statistic of tasers killing an average of one person per week in the US, we can assume that as of 2023, the number has climbed to 1,328 taser-related deaths and more each week. And so, you know, this is really evident in showing that these weapons are not as peaceful or as safe as police departments may want us to believe. And even for playing into the health and safety risks of using tasers on individuals, the Santa Clara Valley Medical Center has a program for Valley Homeless Healthcare, and they created a statement and a letter really going into the effects of the health effects of someone being tased and the damage that it can cause. And so when we look at the health risks associated with tasers, according to the American Heart Association, there's documented evidence that tasers could cause cardiac arrhythmias leading to sudden cardiac death, even in healthy individuals, depending on how fast their pulse is going, how many times they are tased, and how much adrenaline is in somebody's body or substances if they are using. All of these things compound and play into each other to really magnify the effects of someone being tased. And when we think about the situations in which someone is interacting with law enforcement in a negative way that's constituting force, there are natural fight or flight responses within every person, within the officer and within the targeted person, that are going to rise. Adrenaline is going to rise because both parties are scared, are fearful. Cortisol, stress levels rise because both parties are in a high intensity situation. And these things all play into the damage that tasers can really cause, and how it is so variable because it really changes between person to person. And in a public health perspective, it is widely recognized among public health experts that trauma experienced within correctional settings is a primary factor that contributes to the destabilization of vulnerable individuals. Multiple studies show that in custody trauma and violence account for an increased lifetime presence of post-traumatic stress disorder, which can, further exacerbate problems by dealing with feelings of anxiety, stress, or getting into a situation that may, again, warrant force and reinforcing feelings of PTSD. And there's also, just to acknowledge arguments on the other side, is that police officers get tased too. And how bad could a taser be if they're also receiving it as well? And what we really want to point out again is the difference between the practicality, the real life scenario in which a taser may be used, and the curated environment in which police officers receive a tasing. So when police officers are tased in school or during trainings, it is a controlled environment. They have spotters, one person on each side to hold them up and help them down after the tase. They are standing and laying down on rubber mats that help insulate the electricity. They're immediately laid down to rest and to recover after being tased. And after being tased one time, they do not receive additional charges or additional shocks. If the adverse or an undesired reaction is is not exhibited. So when we think about the practicality of using a taser, it's to subdue somebody, to get them from standing to on the ground, laying down, whichever. If an officer receives the tase, mildly, they don't feel that affected by it, they don't feel a lot of pain, they don't feel like they have to lie down, that officer is not going to receive multiple tases until they get the effect of, oh, this really hurts, I need to lie down now. Additionally, with the spotters is they're holding on to the officers, one hand on each arm. And when you're holding bodies physically and electricity goes through them, that electricity is shared with whatever is touching them that is able to conduct that electricity. So really, the officer who's receiving the charge is not receiving the full force of the weapon. Where in practicality, we don't see these same scenarios or these same situations play out. When tensions are high, our flight or flight responses get triggered. Our heart rates increase. We have anxiety and adrenaline rushes into our bodies. In practicality, there's no truly safe environment for a targeted person to land if they lose consciousness or if they lose their mobility control. Which means that if they hit their head on a hard surface, they may, receive trauma or injury from that. And if an adverse or undesired effect is shown, like they don't get to the ground immediately or they're not immediately subdued, that targeted person is subjected to additional stuns from the taser. And so this is really, to draw the comparison that while, yes, police officers do receive taser training, they do receive the feeling of the shock, it is at nowhere near the same magnitude or severity that it takes place in our communities. And so what I'm going to do in a little bit is bring Raymond Goins up to speak a little bit on his personal testimony and lived experiences on what he's seen on the effects of tasers and how those situations play out. Because again, the reality is in a person's environment, their psychological and emotional state are all going to affect how they respond to being tased. If they have a racing heartbeat because they're nervous, they're in physical stress, they were running for whichever reason, they're getting wrestled to the ground, a mental or physical fatigue, health conditions like high blood pressure, pacemaker devices, or heart or neurological conditions, these things all impact how severely the effect of someone being hurt after a tase is. And then again, a physical environment, if the person is wet, if it's raining outside, if they're wearing or laying or standing on top of metal, these are all things that can really exacerbate the severity of the electricity. And so I'm going to turn things over to Raymond for a couple minutes for him to share a little bit about his experience and what he's seen.
So my experience, my standpoint from what I've seen when I was incarcerated, basically is correctional staff, they abuse their power. So if they were to get tasers and I was in my cell and I suffer from mental illness, I suffer from depression and ADHD. So if I was in my cell and I was having a depressive state, saying that I had bad news to report or I received information that one of my loved ones passed away while I was incarcerated and I seek mental health help and I'm having a deteriorated state. And the police come and they're not equipped to deal with mental health inmates. They're not equipped to deal with anybody dealing with anything mental health related. And I actually speak to my clinician, and they disagree with my presence and how I request to help. And I request help for mental health, and they tell me I need to calm down. And I tell them I need to calm down, and it just slowly escalates. It escalates because I'm not responding the way they want me to respond because they're not equipped to deal with mental health inmates. They then will draw down their tasers on me. They make me comply and taser me. If I'm in my cell and they taser me, it's not an if, it's a when I hit something hard, what would happen? The cell, if you've never been in a cage or a cell in jail, there's nothing soft in there. Everything in that cell is hard. everything in that cell will kill you if you go far. So when you're tasered, whether they trace you through the trace lock, which I assume they will do, you're going to hit either the bed, you're going to hit your bed, which has sharp corners, sharp steel corners, and you're going to bust your head open. You're going to hit the toilet, which is made of complete steel. You're going to bust your head open. You're going to hit the table, which is made of steel. You're going to bust your head open. You're going to hit the stool, which is made of steel. You're going to bust your head open. You're going to hit the wall and then hit the floor, which is made of brick. But you're going to bust your head open. There's no good result that can come from being tasered while you're incarcerated. There's no way where they said a planned use of taser. There's no such thing as planned use of taser where they come in, planned use, and they're going to taser you, and the results come out positive for the person that's experiencing a mental health breakdown. Allowing my perspective from an ex-inmate, from somebody from the community, allowing sheriffs to use tasers on people like me and other people in my community, it's just giving people like me a death sentence that they don't know they have yet. It's creating, it's even with me having mental health issues, I fear that if I have a breakdown, that I will get killed because they're not equipped to handle the mental health issues. I want to ask for help if I had suicide ideations or anger issues, or I needed help from mental health from the community, because I fear that my life will be taken because these sheriffs have tasers and they will use them on me. I couldn't. I've seen correctional officers misuse mace. I've seen correctional officers misuse misuse their own physical power, misuse their own physical force. So allowing them to have more tools to misuse is just starting off on people's deaths. I heard one said that in the legal profession that the DA will say that finding one person guilty is the equivalent. They rather let a million go free than find one person guilty who was actually innocent. Well, they're going to kill people who are actually innocent. Shooting the same theory, I'm saying, be attached to people in an adjudication process where they haven't been found guilty yet. There's nothing more I can really explain. I implore you guys, like the sheriff's department, the people that are in charge of custodians of people who are allegedly commit crimes, they're not equipped to deal with mental health inmates. They're not equipped to deal with nobody.
Thank you so
And
much.
yeah,
Oh, did you want to add one more thing, Raymond?
No, I can't implore enough. Don't give the sheriff tasers. Like there's gotta be, well, there is better alternatives. A de-escalation context results from the basic communication skills. Teach people how to communicate. Teach people how to communicate, how to de-escalate. Don't approach a situation you're giving sheriffs to treat inmates, enemy combatants weapons. Like they're gonna treat us like combatants. Somebody from the military once told me recently. He said, Raymond, what do you think you're gonna do? We train these guys up with these tasers or these weapons, and we train them on how to use them, and we get them through all these scenarios, and we put them in the field and say, don't use them. When all these 21, 22, 23-year-olds, they're amped up and they want to taser somebody. They want to see somebody fall. It's a game to them. It's a toy to them. It's a weapon, but to people in garb that represent law enforcement, it's a toy to hurt people like me. And with that's all I gotta say.
Thank you so much for sharing, Raymond. I really appreciate you bringing your perspective to the table and sharing about your experiences. It's really, really valuable to have your perspective and your experience here and to have you in this space. So yes, thank you for sharing. And
Thank you for having me.
yes, of course. And we're going to move on a little bit, but not stray too far away. We're going to look a little bit at this company that's trying to secure the contract with the county. And then so there's this kind of second underlining theme to this campaign that's more than just police accountability and human rights for our residents, but also ensuring that county resident tax dollars are not going towards companies that don't align with the county's values and the county's beliefs. So looking at this, Axon had created an 8-page warning for this tool, quote unquote, that they refer to as a weapon 145 times. And in this 8-page warning, it increasingly states that in order to shift liabilities to, in order to shift basically liability from the company to the city and the police department is the goal for Axon in securing this contract. They have this 8-page warning that advises users to not use the taser in any of the following areas: face, eyes, neck, chest, heart, and genitals, and not to taser a variety of populations, including frail, pregnant people, individuals with mental illness, and those with heart problems. And if we're looking at any given person walking down the street, you don't know any of those things about any of those people. You don't know if somebody walking past you has a heart condition. You don't know if somebody walking past you is pregnant. And in any high stress situation where an officer feels that force is necessary, how are they able to determine that as well? And then looking at a litigation standpoint, Reuters was able to determine that Axon had about $172 million paid by cities and their insurers for about 193 cases in terms of civil suit or wrongful death, whichever. That amount does not include 36 cases in which settlements remained confidential or were unavailable to the public. These findings should show that any law enforcement agency, city, or county contemplating the purchase of Axon's tasers. So really what the company is looking for is to shift total responsibility, total liability for any type of potential suit that could come their way for any kind of wrongful injury or death from them as a company for supplying the county with the tasers to the county, for the county to deal with those settlements and for the county to pay out these families. And where is the county getting this money from? Our taxpayers. And when we look at the company culture of Axon, on August 30th, Reuters released an investigative report into Axon's company culture specifically. And what they found was an all-in culture in which some employees and former interns felt that there was immense pressure in order to be tased in order to feel some kind of acceptance in the workforce or to show loyalty to the workforce. Some members of the executive management suite were tattooed with the Axon company logo and were pressuring other non-tattooed management members to also get the tattoo. And in company events like summer barbecue and other kinds of company retreats, there was a company-wide activity encouraging that any newbies or people who hadn't been tased yet that were working at the company be tased in front of everybody as some kind of initiation, as one of their former interns quoted in the Reuters article stated. And they have an immense culture of referring to women as, excuse my language, referring to women as bitches within the company, and a general nasty culture that doesn't really align with Santa Clara's values. Because if you think about when the efforts to stop the jail being built in the county, one of the arguments that stopped the jail from being built was the fact that the construction company that was trying to secure the contract had a very negative history with anti-LGBT support. And when that was brought to the Board of Supervisors' attention, the Board of Supervisors stated, that's not us, that doesn't reflect our county, that doesn't reflect our people, we do not want to work with those kinds of people. And that proposal was suspended. And so we want to take that same approach here. we have this company that wants to shift complete responsibility for their own product to a company that they're trying to secure a contract with, so that there is no loss of profit to them. They want to have Santa Clara County residents pay for any kind of payouts or lawsuits that may come their way from the implementation of tasers. And additionally, a company that does not align with the Board of Supervisors' spoken and agreed upon values based on prior campaigns and prior statements they've made, want to secure a contract with our county. And, you know, we really, again, want to call out that this company is not a company that Santa Clara County should be conducting business with, and is certainly not a kind of company that resident taxpayer dollars should be going towards. And we do, again, want to highlight some alternatives to tasers and some basic values. We recognize that it is hard to say no to a lot of things and provide alternatives. And so we feel that it is really important here that we highlight what what the Coalition for Justice and Accountability believes are rightful alternatives to implementing tasers. And then so the main one that we want to look at here is de-escalation. Tasers are already discussed or thought of as being de-escalation tools within the law enforcement space. And we want to really hone in on what the true meaning and true value of de-escalation is, because a violent weapon that causes severe injury and even death is not a de-escalation tool. Officers should be using peaceful negotiation tactics in order to de-escalate a scenario. And this is really going back to what Raymond was sharing earlier, that these officers need to be trained and need to be taught effective communication for people of all varying states. If a person is unarmed or incapacitated, this should be the first and only method utilized in terms of confrontation. The psycho-emotional state, the psychological and emotional state of both officers and the targeted person heavily influence the scene. Approaching the situation with peace and de-escalation is key to a peaceful resolution. If somebody is in mental health distress and they are being met with somebody who is brash, who is harsh, or doesn't know how to create a feeling of empathy for that person, then the affected person is going to have a really hard time in seeing that the officer or whoever is there to help in any kind of way. And so we really want to highlight some work that Silicon Valley Debug is working on with Surge. They're working on a campaign to increased trust team funding and get them a direct 10-digit line. So trust is an emergency mental health crisis response line, and usually you have to go through 988 in order to contact them, and then there's a little bit of pre-screening, and then you are connected to trust. And what Debug is working to do with Surge is get Trust its own established phone line, so that you don't have to go through any kind of pre-screening to determine enough of a crisis for you to access this service. They want to work to make that service as accessible as possible to anybody who may need it without any prior pre-screening. And then, we also believe that it is essential that we treat people with dignity and with respect. As of February 2023, 85% of those in Santa Clara County jails have not yet been convicted of a crime. And the World Health Organization has stated that certain forms of punishment used in U.S. carceral settings, such like solitary confinement, meet international criteria for torture, inflicting pain upon those detained when not for a specific tactical objective, meets the defined legal standards for excessive force, and is thus torturous. And what we really want to highlight here is when not for a specific tactical objective. This 85% of incarcerated people in Santa Clara County is a really high volume of people to be sitting in prisons and sitting in jails and having not yet been convicted of anything. If we think about our constitutional rights, we're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, and having people sit in prisons and sit in jails when nothing's been proven against them is wrongful. And so that again ties back into treating people with dignity and with respect, and all going into the importance of having effective communication with one another. And then I also want to turn things over to Sean Allen to also provide some personal testimony and lived experiences, and also speak a little bit on the spectrum of force and brutality. What we really want to look at here is like, where do tasers fall in between de-escalation to deadly force? And we see that it's like the second step here. But I will leave this for Sean to dive into a little bit more, and I will turn things over to him.
Hi. So in looking at this thing and as it relates to my own experience, I spent well over 34 years in law enforcement, but predominantly part of my job was to teach in the academy various topics, and also train once people have graduated from the academy, and also train experienced officers. And part of that training is the actual application of all policies. So that includes the use of force policy as well. And so what we're seeing is that with this particular weapon, and I want to emphasize weapon because the use of the word tool is soft verbiage, and it's basically there to soften the reality of what this weapon does. So when you're looking at a use of force continuum, the beginning of the use of force continuum is an officer's presence, which is the greatest and most impactful level of force on the use of force continuum. And so what recent Department of Justice report on use of force throughout the state of California indicates clearly that the more experienced officers, the better critical thinkers with that experience use force less than the younger, youthful, less experienced counterparts. So when you start off with the taser itself, and it's being sold, and it's being sold, I should say, again, as a less than lethal device, and that's negative. That's incorrect. It is the most lethal device out of all the use of force weapons available to law enforcement officers, with the exception of the firearm. As we already identified, it's led to the deaths of over 1,000 people in the U.S., and that number is climbing. So what's really critical for me as a trainer, after reading the 8-page warning, what the manufacturer is saying is that there is no practical use outside of deadly force for this weapon. And in a deadly force situation, it would never be used, almost never be used, because an officer would respond, law enforcement officer would respond with the use of a firearm. So putting this weapon as a less than lethal device is not practical at all. The manufacturer clearly says, that's not true. A recent article that was from the Mercury News in regards to the use of tasers and other weapons, the use of force with the San Jose Police Department, said that 95% of the taser use for San Jose Police Department was on people who are mentally ill. Again, the taser warning explicitly says do not use tasers on the mentally ill. And so when you're talking about use of force, what people have to realize is use of force, when it comes to use of physical force, it has to be first justified and necessary. And so when you're looking at this device, when you're talking about the necessity of, you have to look at the possibility of, and possibility is death. So when a law enforcement officer is testifying about their use of force with a taser, the question should be asked is, especially in the case of in the result of great bodily injury or death, is that, did you understand, or did your training tell you that this weapon could kill people in these instances? and it's every instance. And the answer should be yes, which means that the officer more than likely, more than reasonably used the force negligently. It's not a again an intermediate weapon because it has caused death in many cases. So in justifying that, so we're talking about the use of force continuum, which consists of again officer's presence, verbal directions we call it, touching, control, or leading by the arm. Then we go to defensive tactics like wrist locks and joint locks, the use of pepper spray, batons. Canines should fit somewhere above or right at the same level as a taser, which is to me all lethal. Because again, there's been some lethality with the use of canines as well. So, and again, the key word in this whole instance by under law is necessary. If it's not necessary, then the taser should be used. Again, making a taser necessary, as I read the warning, it is a lethal weapon device, not a less than lethal weapon device, and that's pretty clear.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sean. We really appreciate you bringing your perspective to the table. So the next slide. Okay. So then that kind of wraps up our presentation. The next thing that we have to share with you is our call to action. So we ask that you attend the Board of Supervisors meeting and deliver public comments in person or via Zoom. So there's been a few changes with when this proposal is going to be heard. Originally, we had thought it would have been heard in the middle of September. It got pushed back to October, and it's been since pushed back again. So rather than publicizing a anticipated date, Asian Law Alliance is actually keeping track of this campaign and following it closely, waiting for it to be added to the Board of Supervisors meeting agendas. So you can follow along with asianlawalliance.org /taser. You can check in there to see when it will get heard. We'll also be sharing on our social media and through email blasts as well, to get the word out there once it is confirmed that Sheriff Johnson will be proposing it to the board. You can also submit written comments if you're not able to attend in person. Those need to be submitted to the board 24 hours advance of the meeting. And so the last thing is we just really want to keep community attention. We really want to keep community attention and eyes on this, so spread the word and get involved in our social media campaign. Magna, if you could drop the link to our anti-taser media toolkit in our chat, that would be super helpful. In this toolkit, you'll find links to additional information and research, a sample outreach email for you to share with others in your community, as well as sample captions and sample public comments. So that we're all ready and prepared when the date comes. And lastly, we have a few minutes for question and answer. So if there are any community questions, you can put it in the Q&A portion, which would be right next to the chat box. And then, if you have any community questions, you can just go ahead and drop those in there. Could presenters share their contact information if we want to learn more? Raymond, Aram, Sean, are you comfortable with having your contact information shared with the attendees?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, alrighty, Bill. So then we'll send a follow-up email after everything settles with our toolkit and then with our speakers' contact information. Are there any other questions? Sorry about that. Alrighty. If there aren't any other questions, that's fine. We can go ahead and Magna, do you want to do the extra questions? It's just a few minutes, so maybe it would be best if, how about Sean, Aram, Raymond, let's do like 1 minute each for a closing remark, and then we'll let everybody go for the night. I think that's good. So it's like a minute and a half for each of you.
I'm gonna go first.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so my first closing statement, I guess I want to say, don't give Santa Clara County them saying tasers. Don't be part of killing innocent people. Don't be part of the genocide of helping Santa Clara County kill innocent marginalized people. Don't be part of the same the oppression that and the criminalization of being oppressed like the Israelis are doing the Palestinians. I think that any oppression is not good, and giving the police a tool or weapon to kill us when they have multiple weapons to kill us, they got their bare fist and they use that. It's just something that we shouldn't stand by. I don't stand by. And with that, I'm saying free Palestine.
Aaron, would you like to go next?
Or who's going?
Would you like to go next, Aaron?
Sure. I just wanted to add a couple of key points. Thank you, Malin. Great presentation. Raymond, great job. Sean, great job. I'm looking at the U.S. Military Department of the Army, February of 2005, and they point out the following: the practice of using these weapons on U.S. Army military and civilian force in training is not recommended given the potential risk. So the U.S. Army has said you shouldn't use these unless it's against an enemy. So there's another strike against bringing this deadly weapon into Santa Clara County. And then the Police Executive Research Forum's model policy that was put out in 2011 says the following. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Agencies should be aware that exposures to tasers could result in injury to personnel and is not recommended. So they are not recommending the model policy that police officers voluntarily submit to any kind of taser blast because of the risk of danger and death. And in addition, Malin, you raised the issue of the culture at Axum. Well, when their employees are asked to submit to a taser blast, they have to sign a waiver. The waiver says essentially 12 times, if you do this, if you submit to a taser blast in a very controlled circumstances, and you die or you're injured, we're not going to pay you or your family. This is another indication that Axum, the manufacturer, has absolutely no confidence that this is a safe weapon. And I know my minute and a half is quickly ending, but in reference to the 8-page warning and the second video that you presented on page 2 of the 8-page warning, it says that you shouldn't be tasering pregnant women. And of course, we know that a pregnant woman lost her child from the video. So this is, I would say as a Jewish American, I want to support Raymond's comment, finally, that the Israelis are committing war crimes daily against the Palestinians. And while we speak out against tasers, and by the way, I did a little research right before the show started, and guess what? The Israeli police have tasers, okay? No surprise there, right? So we have to make consistent and strong statements in our community to everybody that we know that we want more than a ceasefire. We want the Israelis to give back the entire state of Palestine that they stole that the Israelis stole in 1948, the year of my birth. And as a Jewish American, that's my position, and I'll tell anybody to their face, that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Try to make this quick. So the idea of this weapon being safe, it's not law enforcement. It's a proven fact that law enforcement officers during training have lost their eyes, have had seared vertebrae, and the weapon in the warning also says it is inherently inaccurate. It could be the projectile can be disturbed even by simply the wind moving. The false narrative of law enforcement needing additional weapons is being sold to the community when, in fact, again, the DOJ report suggests and clearly indicates that an experienced officer, a critical thinker, is the best resolution to potentially violent situations over the use of additional weapons. So that's just a false narrative. The greatest impact to a use of force scenario is an effective communicator. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your thoughts and sharing your expertise with us tonight. I do see that Bill has a few other questions. So if our panelists would like to stay behind just a few minutes to answer his questions, we can go ahead and do that. However, if I do recognize the time and it is 7:02, so if you are only committed until 7 p.m. for any of our attendees or our speakers, thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate having you, and we'll send a follow-up email with our speakers' contact information, the toolkit, and the link to ALA's website, so you can follow along with us regarding this issue. Thank you again for being here, and if you are able to stay, we'll answer a few more questions. So for whoever feels like they have a good answer for this one, what accountability is there for the misuse of tasers by law enforcement? What about accountability of the County Board of Supervisors that approves the usage of tasers within the county?
So for accountability, I'm speaking from an AMA perspective, from somebody on this side. There is no accountability. There is none. Yeah, there is none. That's a simple answer.
I would add the following, that on page 6 of the taser warning, it says, do not use for torture or other purposes. Isn't that interesting that the Axum recognizes that this tool can in fact be used for torture? So if the Board of Supervisors votes to purchase tasers, they have blood on their hands. There's no question about it. People are going to die. They're going to be serious injury. They're going to be seriously injured, and they're going to be tortured on top of the tear gas that's already been used in the county jail. And our district attorney, Jeff Rosen, has repeatedly refused to exercise his prosecutorial discretion to prosecute officers that have used the taser inappropriately and have killed people. There has not been one prosecution of a police officer since Jeff Rosen for a deadly force incident involving a police officer and a community member since he was first elected back in 2010. We've got to pressure Jeff Rosen, the district attorney. He's our elected official that can bring charges in these cases, and that would bring accountability. When the cops know that they're going to be prosecuted for tasing people in the cities that do have tasers, hopefully we don't get them in Santa Clara County, and I say the cities that already have them in Santa Clara County, that's going to be the bottom line for accountability, prosecuting bad cops, treating them like ordinary citizens that commit crimes.
So yeah, there's a lack of accountability. I mean, what we've seen today is that we have new laws from the state that are supposed to be in place to remove a law enforcement officer's certification when there's issues of misconduct. And to date, that I'm aware of, there hasn't been one officer's has been decertified. The county, there's a government code that talks about the county's authority to oversee the principals of each county office. So, i.e., the sheriff's office, the chief of probation, parks and recreation, all these areas. And the sheriff, since the sheriff's elected official, and the district attorney is where they have the least amount of control, the county board supervisor. So there's a limit to their authority over those people. And then, of course, we have the civilian oversight groups that are in place now. And again, they have no authority to hire and fire. What you have is the internal affairs process. And what the public needs to understand what the internal affairs process, the people assigned to internal affairs in almost every jurisdiction, these people are hand selected by the principal, by the chief of police, the sheriff, the chief of probation, so on and so forth. And these people, in many cases, I found have issues of misconduct themselves. But the ethics, at least in the sheriff's office, we know to date, even though we have a new sheriff, because he hasn't made any significant changes in terms of internal affairs process or the administration, the county has identified that the ethics of the internal affairs investigations is in question. So in other words, oversight and accountability is still an area which we have long lengths to pursue in order to get adequate accountability. And there's nothing that's been done. I mean, I could point out a number of people within the sheriff's office who have misconduct issues that escape discipline simply because they were allowed to escape the statute of limitations. And that happens a lot too. So anytime there's an issue of misconduct, I say this all the time, any type of misconduct, it directly correlates to poor leadership and training. That's exactly what it is.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying behind, answering those last couple questions, and for putting in those last little bits. I think that really kind of rounds out our discussion. So that's really nice to have. Thank you, Bill, for those questions. And I believe that's it. So I think we are going to go ahead and let everyone go for their evening. Thank you again to our speakers, Sean, Aram, and Raymond, for joining us this evening and sharing their expertise. And thank you to the attendees for sharing your evening with us and learning more about this important issue. All right, and have a good night. Thank you. Bye-bye.